Today, we're going to talk about the implications of judges not holding Trump to account in the face of his repeated violations of the law. And I interview Pod Save America host Tommy Vitor about the passage of foreign aid, how it's impacted Marjorie Taylor Greene, and the implications of TikTok's possible ban in the U.S. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're watching No Lie. So at some point in the coming minutes, hours, days, or maybe even by the time you've watched this, Judge Merchan will find Donald Trump in criminal contempt for any of the more than 10 violations of his gag order for his New York criminal trial. And the moment that Judge Merchan does that, Donald Trump will be in violation of the conditions of his release in his other cases. On August 3rd, 2023, you remember that Donald Trump was in D.C. in court for his arraignment, and the federal magistrate judge said to Donald Trump, quote, "It is important to comply with your conditions of release. If you fail to comply, a warrant may be issued for your arrest and you may be held before trial. Your most important condition of release is that you not commit a state, federal, or local offense. If so, your release may be revoked." He then asked, "Do you understand, sir?" To which Donald Trump nodded. Let's be clear. Contempt of court is a crime, meaning Trump will have committed a crime while on pretrial release in his other cases, thereby violating his terms of release, which means that Judge Chutkan in D.C., or Judge Cannon in Florida, or Judge McAfee in Fulton County, and certainly Judge Merchan in New York have a justification to detain Trump pending trial. I've spoken about Judge Merchan at length here. What's likely to happen is that Trump will get a warning for his gag order violations, probably a $1,000 fine per violation, and then hopefully a warning that there is even one more violation, he will surrender his right to pretrial release. So that's Judge Merchan in New York. But as far as what those other judges will do, will Judge Chutkan or Cannon or McAfee revoke his pretrial release? Here's the thing. I wouldn't bet on it. You know, these judges haven't exactly put on a clinic in fearless presiding. I mean, Judge Cannon herself is literally so in the tank for the guy that she might as well be on his defense team. But this lack of courage to simply do their jobs without fear or favor is an issue not only because it undermines faith in the entire justice system, that we actually do have a two-tier justice system, and not only because it allows Trump to get away with more criminality and no accountability, but because every single day he's not held accountable, it emboldens Trump even more. When a judge imposes a gag order and Trump violates it and nothing happens, it shows him that the rules don't apply to him. And fast forward to the hellish possibility that Donald Trump wins in November. He would become president under the pretense that he can do whatever he wants, that there are no laws that bind him. Because frankly, he is able to do whatever he wants right now. And look, the point here is not for anyone to throw up their hands and give up on the court system, because us checking out is actually exactly what Trump wants. He wants zero scrutiny. He wants a disinterested electorate. He wants to slink through this trial with little to no fanfare. So no, I'm not saying this so that you will despair. I'm saying this because progressive media needs to demand that the judges uphold the standards that they themselves set. Right-wing media has been running Trump apologia since the second this trial started, if not before. If we are not fighting back on the left every second of the day, then we are ceding this ground to the bad actors on the right who are carrying water for a criminal. We need to keep the pressure on and get it out there that if these judges are going to set conditions for Trump's release, then if and when he violates them, they need to be prepared to do their jobs regardless of his former position, regardless of his current position, and regardless of the massive campaign that right-wing media is blasting out on the airwaves to protect him. They are not the only ones with megaphones here, and they're certainly not the only ones who should be able to dictate the terms of this conversation. And lastly, I need to make one more point, because we spend a lot of time focusing on these cases. The real test of holding Donald Trump accountable isn't going to be in the courtroom, not in Manhattan or D.C. or Fulton County or in Florida. It is going to be at the ballot box. Let's face it, if Trump wins, it's going to be difficult to see his prosecutions go forward. But if he loses, then not only do we avoid what would effectively be the end of democracy in America, but it will ensure that Donald Trump is held to account in the courtroom. Delays be damned. So whether it's good news from his prosecutions or bad news, just know at the end of the day, what actually matters here in terms of holding Donald Trump accountable wholly and fully is what happens in November. Next up is a preview of my interview with Tommy Vitor. The foreign aid bill has finally passed both chambers. It was signed into law by Biden. That's the $95 billion that's going to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. On the House side, this had passed despite major opposition from Marjorie Taylor Greene and these other far-right MAGA Republicans. What does this do to Marjorie Taylor Greene's standing? Like, does this pierce the bubble that she had outsized strength in that conference?
I think so. I mean, I think she looks completely feckless. You know, I have to say, credit to Speaker Johnson. He did something that he thought was right, knowing that there could be real political risk for him. And he thought, no, he looked at the intelligence and he decided that if Putin was able to win the war in Ukraine, that he might keep going into Western Europe. and then that might mean that a NATO country was at risk, which would draw us directly into the war. He said, no, let's give them assistance now. It's been too long. And so I think Marjorie Taylor Greene looks like an idiot. And it seems like Trump sided with Speaker Johnson over her, which is not what anyone expected.
Yeah, completely like tanks her, I guess, artificial standing that she had. Just one quick thing on the Mike Johnson thing. I know that we should take the win where we can.
I know.
It's not worth, and I know you know what I'm going to say already, which is like, it's hard to applaud him for doing the bare minimum. Like, this guy knew, based on these intelligence briefings, what would happen if Putin had carte blanche to like continue beating up on Ukraine, and the fact that it took him this long reflects really poorly onto him. So yes, it is good. Look, I should just take the win, but
I know what you're saying.
It's worth like noting that he could have done this sooner, that the writing was on the wall in terms of the danger of allowing Putin to continue this barrage against Ukraine, and yet it took him this long to get here.
Yeah, listen, continuing to support Ukraine was unequivocally the right thing to do on the merits. He was worried about the politics for 6 months, which, was very costly for the Ukrainian military. They took a lot of casualties in that time. He got to the right place. I appreciate that he put politics aside. And also, you have the New York Post mocking Marjorie Taylor Greene on their front page. So it's a win-win here for humanity.
All right, so let's talk about the impacts that this bill will actually have, because on Wednesday, Biden signed the bill. He immediately announced that $1 billion would be going right to Ukraine. I believe he said the same day, within hours of him signing it. In practical terms, what does this mean for the war in Ukraine?
I mean, what it means is the United States will be able to rush them things that are absolutely critical to defending cities and defending positions currently being held by the Ukrainian military. So early in the war, the Ukrainians were able to shoot down something like 80% of missiles, bombs, rockets fired at them from the Russian side. That percentage has dropped to like under 50%, which means people are getting killed. It means that the Russians are taking out civilian energy infrastructure. It's just been a really deadly time for Ukrainian civilians, who are seeing more heavy bombardment now than they have seen since the very beginning of the war. So this is literally going to save lives. And also what it means is you have Ukrainian troops desperately trying to hold positions in eastern Ukraine, despite getting outfired at 10-1, which means the Russians were shooting 10 shells for every shell the Ukrainians could return fire with. So now they'll finally be able to address that shell hunger and actually start fighting back, basically.
And is this going to be enough? Like, are we going to need to be back here in X amount of months? I mean, this was, the whole bill was for $95 billion. Mm-hmm. A good portion of that is actually going to the U.S. military, to bolstering what we needed. So is this going to be enough? Like, was this our last shot, basically, to fund the war effort in Ukraine?
It's the last shot until the 2024 election. And then after that, we'll know, is this a Trump-led government? Is this a Republican-led government that's going to cut off Ukraine? Or is Joe Biden going to be in charge and we're going to keep supporting them? You're absolutely right that this package of arms is probably not enough for them to win the war or end the war. It's enough for them to continue to defend themselves. And I can understand why, that's worrisome for people, because it's a lot of money. There's a lot of people dying. Hopefully associated with this arms package comes some sort of peace talks that might get us to a settlement and a ceasefire.
It was widely accepted before that Putin would likely win this war without any aid from the U.S. What does this mean for Putin now?
I mean, it means that he went from being in the best possible position. It means he went from, having a strategy where he was just playing for time. He was waiting for the West to get tired, to get sick of sending money and assistance over to Ukraine, and basically just trying to wait us all out. Now it means he's going to face stiff resistance for at least the next year. So, look, Putin is a dictator. Every indication is that Russian public opinion is fully behind this war, but he is still losing tens and tens of thousands of troops, hundreds of thousands if you count people that are being wounded. So at some point, public opinion or the politics of this could catch up to him and start causing problems. So he wants to win this thing fast, and this tranche of aid is going to make that a lot harder.
And of course, to see the full interview with Tommy, click the thumbnail right here on the screen or check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel. You can also listen to the audio version by clicking that link on the screen. And of course, to see more of my content, the subscribe button's on the screen as well.